Okay, so just to review, scrolling in to zoom in, scrolling down to move out. That's called zooming. Another nice way to zoom, say I have my little drawing here, and I just want to zoom in or out to see the entire drawing that I have. So in CAD, we can type in zoom, or the shortcut is just Z. So I'm hitting Z on my keyboard. And we notice down here in my command bar, I now have a Z here, and it's telling me all the commands here that begin with Z. And the top one here, it says if I just hit Z and enter, it's going to run the zoom command. And then whenever we run a command in CAD, if there's additional parameters that it needs, it's going to kind of give us an idea of what those are. So I can hit A at this point, which will zoom all. I can hit C for center, dynamic for dynamic zoom, E for extents, previous scales, kind of all these different options here. I like to hit E. Usually gives us a nice zoom of exactly what we've drawn so far. So basically, it's going to zoom and center in such a way so your entire drawing fits perfectly in your CAD window. I can also hit Z and A, which will zoom out to my entire grid here. This is what we call our limits, which we'll go over later. But now my entire grid is within view. So as we get more and more detailed, we can zoom way in nice and close. And then when I'm done doing my edits, I'll just hit Z, enter, A, enter. Zooms out all the way back in to where we were. Now, often when doing intricate work, I'm zoomed in nice and close, and I want to move around to, say, to the right a little bit. That's called pan. So I can type in P for pan, and you'll notice as soon as I hit P, it's already brought up that shortcut here for pan. And we have this little symbol of the hand here. So now I have my hand, and I can move my image around this way. So that way I don't have to zoom in and out to move around. So this is called panning. I'm going to hit escape when I'm done. Another way, and this is probably the way I pan more often, but it's a little tricky with the mouse, but the mouse wheel, in addition to scrolling up and down, if you push down just on that mouse button, that also activates the pan. So I'm just pushing down on my mouse button, and I'm able to move my sheet around. You can also access the pan by hitting the space bar on your keyboard. So I believe I said this earlier, in CAD there's always 20 different ways of doing the same thing. This is an example of that. So that's zooming and panning. Let's see, and then we obviously discussed the line tool, so I'm going to introduce a couple new tools today. The first one will be the circle tool, which we use to draw circles. So we can either hit the circle icon with our mouse on our toolbar, or I can begin to type circle. So just by typing C, we notice that C is the shortcut for typing circle. So you just hit C and enter. And then looking down at our command bar, we can see that it's asking us a few things here. So there's actually a number of different ways of drawing a circle. So right now it's either asking us to specify a center point for our circle, or we have these options, 3-point, 2-point, or TTR, which is tangent, tangent, radius. We're not going to deal with any of those right now except just drawing from our center point. So let's say I want to put a circle right at the tip of this little drawing I have right here. So I'm just going to click right here to specify my center point. And then now, looking back down at my command bar, you can see it's asking me to either specify the radius of the circle, or I can hit D to specify a diameter. So right now, I'm going to specify my radius, and you can see by moving my mouse, I can specify the size of my radius. And then you'll also notice that I have, right now it says 2.088. This is what I call, or this is what's called the dynamic input. So what I can do here to get exact amount, because it's kind of tough to, like, let's say I want my radius to be exactly 2. Moving my mouse around, I really can't get it to 2 because I have my snapping on. So what I can do very quickly is just override that by just typing in 2 manually and hitting enter. And now it's given me a radius of exactly 2. Now let's say inside here, I want to put another circle, but instead of a radius, so the radius is the measurement from the center of the circle to the outside. Instead of a radius, I want to have a diameter of 2. So a diameter is all the way across the circle. So I'm going to hit C again for circle. I'm going to hit my center point right here. And then this time I'm going to hit D for diameter, hit enter. And then now I'm going to do 2. And now it's given me a circle with a diameter of 2 instead of a radius of 2. Any questions on circling? Okay. Now let's say I want to delete a couple things. Up to this point, I imagine some of you have made mistakes, so if you haven't figured out how to correct those already, what we can do, let's say I drew this inner circle here by mistake. I'm going to click on this circle, and you notice by clicking on it, I have all of my what we call grip points here, which are snap points. I've been activated, and I have this sort of dotted line around my circle, so that means my circle is now selected. Only this object is selected. I can just hit delete on my keyboard to delete it. Then I realize, ooh, that's not what I meant to delete. I can bring it back by hitting Command Z, which is undo. The undo command is also found under Edit, and we have undo. And CAD keeps a pretty long history of undo, so you can keep doing Command Z and just keep stepping backwards and backwards and backwards for, I think, 20 or 30 different steps. You can set it in your preferences. Another way of deleting objects is to scroll over them, and there's 2 types of doing that, 2 types of methods. One is from left to right, and one is from right to left. So the way left to right works, so I'm going to start here and click, and then as I scroll down, you'll see I have that blue window. So by doing that, it's only going to select objects that you've completely encompassed in that selection. So I'll demonstrate one more time. I'm going over, and you'll see that this one diagonal line here is completely in my selection, but the other lines are only partially in my selection. So because of that, it will not select any partial lines, only the lines that they're fully encompassed within that area. That's if you scroll left to right. If you scroll from right to left, they call this fencing. And what that's going to do is you'll notice now I have a green box instead of a blue box. In this situation, it's going to select anything that green box is touching. So now when I click again, you'll notice it selected my line that the first one did, but it also selected this entire line, even though I didn't scroll over that entire area. Those are selections, the 2 different ways of selecting window fencing, or window selection, window crossing, and fence crossing, the 2 terminologies for that. Okay, then something else that some of you have noticed, down here in our toolbars here, we have our drawing aids. This first one is snap mode, which will snap to your grid. The next one to the right is the grid display, which turns our grid display on and off. And then another one that people sometimes get stuck on is object snap. And I will be using this a little bit today. What your object snap does is automatically snaps to certain points that you have selected. And if I right click on this, it'll show me all of the different settings that I can now snap to. So to demonstrate this, I'm just going to draw a line. And so with this activated, you notice as I get close to an area, see how it made that little box there? That means it's going to snap right to that box, which is our endpoint. So as I get close to stuff, it's an endpoint. Here I can snap to just the what they call quadrants of the circle. See how it makes little diamonds there? So these are all different sort of snap points that I can snap to. So if I wanted to create a line from the absolute top of this circle and then absolutely to the right of the circle, I can do that, hit enter, And if I zoom in super close, no matter how close I zoom in, those are always going to be touching. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but AutoCAD is accurate to 16 decimal points. And with that kind of tolerance, there's absolutely no way you'd be able to sort of freehand drawings like this and actually have the lines touch. So it's critical that you use your object snapping when drawing. And the next tool you need to know is our rectangle tool. The command for that is rec, R-E-C, or rectang, for drawing a rectangle. And then again, once we've launched the command, it's asking us to specify our first corner point, or gives us a bunch of options. We'll ignore all the options for a moment. And let's say I want to draw a rectangle from this point, so I have my snapping on. I'm going to go from this point to the center of my circles. I'm going to go right up here to the center of my circles and snap to that point. Sure. Now let's say you're doing an assignment and I'm giving you the exact dimensions of your rectangle. So I'm going to go rectangle again. I'm going to specify my first point. You'll notice as I move my mouse here, I have two numbers to the right. Mine currently says 2 and 0.9. So it means I have a width of 2 and a height of 0.9. Let's say the assignment is you need to draw a rectangle that's 4 by 3. So in this case, I'm going to override the 2 with a 4. And then to go over and adjust my height, I'm just going to hit my tab button. And I'm going to punch in 3. So it's 4 by 3, hit enter, and now it has drawn a rectangle that is perfectly 4 by 3. And then, did I have any measurements on today's assignment?
Yes.
I did, okay. So the last thing that we'll go over for today is how to add what we call dimensions. And the first thing we need to do is we need to go into a different layer. So right now we've been drawing all of these objects in our object layer. So you notice up here, upper right-hand corner, we have layers, and we're in object. Right now what we're going to do is we're going to start dimensioning, and so we're going to put our dimensions in our dims layer. So you'll notice when I click on my layer object, I'm going to go down here to this blue one here, which is dims, D-I-M. And then we'll notice on our toolbar at the top here, we have an option for dimension. We're going to click on that. And I'm going to start with a linear dimension. So a linear dimension is just measuring the height and width. Is everyone able to follow along okay? Excellent. So I'm in my dim layer. I went to dimension, and I've selected linear as the dimension that I'm going to add. And I'm going to snap to the top of the rectangle I drew and the bottom of the rectangle I drew. So that's the dimension that I'm going to measure. And then my third click is where I actually want the number of my dimension to show up. So I'm just going to offset it slightly and put it right there. I'll get rid of this other stuff. So we can see here that we've got our rectangle, and it is exactly 3 units tall. At this point, we don't know what those units are because we haven't specified. It could be feet, it could be inches, millimeters, it could be light years. All right, now we're going to add another dimension, and this again will be linear, and we're going to do our width. So I'm going to click our bottom section here, and again I want to make sure that my dimensions are snapping to my endpoints, so it should show up as a square when we snap. I'll offset that a little bit as well. So if you've done everything right, your dimensions would say exactly 4 by 3. because that was the size of the rectangle that we drew. Now the problem with a linear dimension is, let's say I do linear again, and I want to know what the hypotenuse, or this distance, is from the top left corner to the bottom right corner. If I use my linear dimension for this, it's still going to show me 3 because it's only measuring width and height. So I don't want to use this option for dimensioning that. Instead, I want to go dimension. I want to go aligned. And then this will allow me to dimension objects in different areas. Good morning.
How did you do that?
So I just added another dimension, but this dimension was the aligned dimension. So 2 more dimensions I'll go over quickly. The next one is to measure the radius, so radius of a circle. And we do that simply by selecting our circle. And so we can see that had our radius of 2 that we punched in. And then we can also go to dimension and measure the diameter. So it's a radius of 2, which says R2. This is now a diameter of 4. And you can see it gives a little circle with the line through it. That means diameter. And then our last dimension I want to show is angular dimension, which is to measure angles. So let's say I want to know what the angle is right on this edge here. So I'm going to select one line, select my second line, and then now I can place where I want this dimension to show up. So right there, it's 90 degrees.
Wait, which tool did you use?
So I just did dimension, and that was angular.
Oh.
And then one more thing I'm going to show you, only because a few students have activated it by accident. To the right of our grid display, the icon that turns our grid on and off, is another icon called Ortho Mode. What Ortho does is, by having this activated, it is only going to allow me to draw objects that are either vertical or horizontal. So I'm going to do my line tool, and then as I move my mouse, even though I move my mouse up and down, it's only going to allow me to draw a line straight. If I go down below here, I can draw my line down. So if you need to draw, really quick rectangles by putting or straight lines for any reason, the Ortho Mode will allow you to do that really quickly. Again, if you're trying to draw diagonal lines and it's not letting you do that, check that Ortho. You might have it on. Just go ahead and turn that off. Okay, so we covered circles, rectangles, dynamic input, punching in measurements manually, which you want to do as often as possible for accuracy. We talked about different layers, so putting things in our object layer, putting our dimensions in our dimension layer. You'll know you've placed your objects in the correct layer because they'll show up as different colors. We talked about zooming, panning, and snapping. So that pretty much covers everything you'll need to get caught up with the assignments. Any questions on any of those items?
I really like this one.
Awesome. Good luck.